Module 4, Higher Education and Life Abroad. Lesson 1, Scholastic Triumphs at Ateneo de Manila. Objectives of this lesson: elaborate Jose Rizal's scholastic development at Ateneo de Manila. Evaluate the system of education received by Jose Rizal at Ateneo de Manila. Guide questions. How did the Jesuit system of education mold their students? How was the academic performance of Jose Rizal at Ateneo de Manila? 4 months after the martyrdom of Gomburza, and with Doña Teodora still in prison, Jose, who had not yet celebrated his 11th birthday, was sent to Manila. He studied in the Ateneo Municipal, a college under the supervision of the Jesuits. This college was a bitter rival of the Dominican-owned College of San Juan de Latran. It was formerly the Escuela Pia, or Charity School, a school for poor boys in Manila, which was established by the city government in 1817. When the Jesuits, who had been expelled from the Philippines in 1768, returned to Manila in 1859, they were given the management of the Escuela Pia, whose name was changed to Ateneo Municipal, and later became the Ateneo de Manila. They were splendid educators, so that Ateneo acquired prestige as an excellent college for boys. On June 10, 1872, Jose, accompanied by Pasiano, went to Manila. He took the entrance examination on Christian doctrine, arithmetic, and reading at the College of San Juan de Letran and passed them. He returned to Calamba to stay a few days with his family and to attend the town fiesta. His father, who first wished him to study at Letran, changed his mind and decided to send him to Ateneo instead. Thus, upon his return to Manila, Jose, again accompanied by Pasiano, matriculated at Ateneo Municipal. At first, Father Magin Ferrando, who was the college registrar, refused to admit him for two reasons. He was late for registration and he was sickly and undersized for his age. Rizal was then 11 years old. However, upon the intercession of Manuel Zeres Burgos, nephew of Father Burgos, he was reluctantly admitted at the Ateneo. Jose was the first of his family to adopt the surname Rizal. He registered under this name at the Ateneo because their family name, Mercado, had come under the suspicion of the Spanish authorities. Pasiano had used Mercado as his surname at the College of San Jose, and he was known to the authorities as Father Burgos' favorite student and confidant. At the time Jose studied in the Ateneo, this college was located in Intramuros, within the walls of Manila. He first boarded in a house outside Intramuros, on Caraballo Street, 25 minutes walk from the college. The boarding house was owned by a spinster named Titay, who owed the Rizal family the amount of 300 pesos. Jose boarded with her in order to collect part of the debt. Jesuit system of education. The system of education given by the Jesuits in the Ateneo was more advanced than that of other colleges in that period. It trained the character of the student by rigid discipline and religious instruction. It promoted physical culture, humanities, and scientific studies. Aside from academic courses leading to the degree of Bachelor of Arts, it offered vocational courses in agriculture, commerce, mechanics, and surveying. The students heard Mass in the morning before the beginning of the daily class. Classes in every subject were opened and closed with prayers. Students were divided into two groups, namely the Roman Empire, consisting of the internos, the borders, and the Carthaginian Empire, composed of the externos, the non-borders. Each of these empires had its ranks. The best student in each empire was the emperor, the second best the tribune, the third best the decurion, the fourth best the centurion, and the fifth best the standard bearer. Within the empire, the students fought for positions. Any student could challenge any officer in his empire to answer questions on the day's lesson. His opponent could lose his position if he committed three mistakes. Any student might be at the end of the line, but if he studied hard and was brilliant, he could depose the officers one after another and become an emperor. The two groups, Roman Empire and Carthaginian Empire, were in constant competition for supremacy in the class. They had their distinctive banners, red for the Roman and blue for the Carthaginians. At the beginning of the school term, both banners were used equally in the classroom. Upon the first defeat, the banner of the losing party was transferred to the left side of the room. Upon the second, it was placed in the interior position on the right side. Upon the third, the inclined flag was placed on the left. Upon the fourth, the flag was reversed and returned to the right. Upon the fifth, the reversed flag was placed on the left. Upon the sixth, the banner was changed with a figure of a donkey. The Ateneo students in Rizal's time wore a uniform which consisted of hemp fabric trousers and striped cotton coat. The coat material was called ruyudillo, which later became famous for it was adopted as the uniform for Filipino troops during the days of the First Philippine Republic. Rizal's first year in Ateneo, 1872 to 1873. On his first day of class in the Ateneo in June 1872, Rizal first heard Mass at the college chapel and prayed fervently to God for guidance and success. When the Mass was finished, he went to his class where he saw a great number of boys, Spaniards, mestizos, and Filipinos. Rizal's first professor in the Ateneo was Father Jose Beck, whom he described as a tall, thin man with a body slightly bent forward, a hurried walk, and ascetic face, severe and inspired, small, deep, sunken eyes, a sharp nose, and was almost Greek, and thin lips forming an arc whose ends fell toward the chin. Being a newcomer and knowing little Spanish, Rizal was placed at the bottom of the class. He was an externo, hence he was assigned to the Carthaginians, occupying the end of the line. After the first week, the Frere Calamba boy progressed rapidly. At the end of the month, he became emperor. He was the brightest pupil in the whole class, and he was awarded the prize. How pleased I was, he said, when I won my first prize, a religious picture. He was proud of it because it was the first prize he ever won at the Ateneo. To improve his Spanish, Rizal took private lessons in Santa Isabel College during the noon recesses, when other Ateneo busy playing or gossiping. He paid 3 pesos for those extra Spanish lessons, but it was money well spent. In the second half of his first year in the Ateneo, Rizal did not try hard enough to retain his academic supremacy which he held during the first half of the term. This was because he resented some remarks of his professor. He placed second at the end of the year, although all his grades were still marked excellent. At the end of the school year in March 1873, Rizal returned to Calamba for summer vacation. He did not particularly enjoy his vacation because his mother was in prison. To cheer him up, his sister Neneng Saturnina brought him to Tanawan with her. This did not cure his melancholy. Without telling his father, he went to Santa Cruz and visited his mother in prison. He told of his brilliant grades at the Ateneo. She gladly embraced her favorite son. When the summer vacation ended, Rizal returned to Manila for his second year term in the Ateneo. This time, he boarded inside Intramuros at number 6 Magallanes Street. His landlady was an old widow named Doña Pepay, who had a widowed daughter and 4 sons. Rizal's second year in Ateneo, 1873 to 1874. Nothing unusual happened to Rizal during the second term in the Ateneo, except that he repented having neglected his studies the previous year, simply because he was offended by the teacher's remark. So, to regain his lost class leadership, he studied harder. Once more, he became emperor. Some of his classmates were new. Among them were 3 boys from Binyan who had been his classmates in the school of Maestro Justiniano. At the end of the school year, Rizal received excellent grades in all subjects and a gold medal. With such scholastic honors, he triumphantly returned to Calamba in March 1874 for the summer vacation. Rizal lost no time in going to Santa Cruz in order to visit his mother on the provincial jail. He cheered up Doña Teodora's lonely heart with news of his scholastic triumphs in Ateneo and with funny tales about his professors and fellow students. The mother was very happy to know that the best favorite child was making such splendid progress in college. In the course of their conversation, Doña Teodora told her son of her dream the previous night. Rizal, interpreting the dream, told her that she would be released from prison in 3 months' time. Doña Teodora smiled, thinking that her son's prophecy was a mere boyish attempt to console her. But Rizal's prophecy became true. Barely 3 months passed, and suddenly Doña Teodora was set free. By that time, Rizal was already in Manila, attending his classes at the Ateneo. Doña Teodora, happily back in Calamba, was even more proud of her son Jose, whom she likened to the youthful Joseph in the Bible in his ability to interpret dreams. It was during the summer vacation in 1874 in Calamba when Rizal began to take interest in reading romantic novels. As a normal teenager, he became interested in love stories and romantic tales. The first favorite novel of Rizal was The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. This thrilling novel made a deep impression on him. His boyish imagination was stirred by the sufferings of Edmond Dantes, the hero in prison, his spectacular escape from the dungeon of Chateau d'If, his finding a buried treasure on the rocky island of Monte Cristo, and his dramatic revenge on his enemies who had wronged him. Rizal read numerous other romantic novels with deep interest. The reading habit helped to enrich his fecund mind. As a voracious reader, he read not only fiction but also non-fiction. He persuaded his father to buy him a costly set of Cesar Cantu's historical work entitled Universal History. According to Rizal, this valuable work was of great and in his studies and enabled him to win more prizes in Ateneo. Later, Rizal read Travels of the Philippines by Dr. Fedor Hagor, a German scientist traveler who visited the Philippines in 1859 to 1860. With what impressed him in this book were Hagor's keen observation of the defects of Spanish colonization and his prophecy that someday Spain would lose the Philippines and that America would come to succeed her as colonizer. The first poem Rizal probably wrote during his days in the Ateneo was Primera Inspiración, my first inspiration, which was dedicated to his mother on her birthday. It is said that he wrote it before he was 14 years old, that is, in the year 1874. Before this year, he did not write poetry because there was gloom in his heart, owing to his mother's imprisonment. Upon the release of his mother in 1874, his poetic heart began to sing with ecstasy and joy. Rizal's third year in Ateneo 1874 to 1875. In June 1874, Rizal returned to the Ateneo for his junior year. Shortly after the opening of the classes, his mother arrived and joyously told him that she was released from prison, just as he had predicted during his last visit to her prison cell in Santa Cruz, Laguna. He was happy, of course, to see his mother once more a free woman. However, despite the family happiness, Rizal did not make an excellent showing in his studies as in the previous year. His grades remained excellent in all subjects, but he won only one medal in Latin. He failed to win the medal in Spanish because his spoken Spanish was not fluently sonorous. He was beaten by a Spaniard who naturally could speak Spanish with fluency and with right accentuation. At the end of the school year, March 1875, Rizal returned to Calamba for the summer vacation. He himself wasn't impressed by his scholastic work, literary works. In 1875, inspired by Father Sanchez, he wrote more poems as such Felicitación, Felicitation, El Embarque, Himno a la Flota de Magallanes, The Departure, Hymn to Magellan's Fleet. Y es español, el cano, el primero en dar la vuelta al mundo. And he is Spanish, el cano, the first to circumnavigate the world. El combate, urbistondo, terror de Jolo. The battle, urbistondo, terror of Jolo. Al Niño Jesús, to the child Jesus. A la Virgen Maria, to the Virgin Mary. Fourth year in Ateneo, 1875 to 76. After a refreshing and happy summer vacation, Rizal went back to Manila for his fourth-year course. On June 16, 1875, he became an interno in the Ateneo. One of his professors this time was Father Francisco de Paula Sanchez, a great educator and scholar. He inspired the young Rizal to study harder and to write poetry. He became an admirer and friend of the slender Calamba lad, whose God-given genius he saw and recognized. On his part, Rizal had the highest affection and respect for Father Sanchez, whom he considered his best professor in the Ateneo. In his student memoir, Rizal wrote of Father Sanchez in glowing terms, showing his affection and gratitude. He described this Jesuit professor as model of uprightness, earnestness, and love for the advancement of his pupils. Inspired by Father Sanchez, Rizal resumed his studies with vigor and zest. He topped all his classmates in all subjects and won 5 medals at the end of the school term. He returned to Calamba for his summer vacation, March 1876, and proudly offered these 5 medals and excellent ratings to his parents. He was extremely happy, for he was able to repay his father somewhat for his sacrifice. His literary works during this school year. In 1876, Rizal wrote poems on various topics: religion, education, childhood memories, and war. They were as follows: Un recuerdo a mi pueblo, in memory of my town, a tender poem in honor of Calamba, the hero's natal town. Alianza íntima entre la religión y la buena educación, intimate alliance between religion and good education. Por la educación recibe lustre la patria. Through education, the country receives light. El cautiverio y el triángulo, batalla de Lucena y profesión de Bodil. The captivity and the triumph, battle of Lucena and the imprisonment of Bodil. This martial poems describes the defeat and capture of Badil, Moorish Sultan of Granada. La entrada triunfal de los reyes catolices en Granada, the triumphal entry of the Catholic monarchs into Granada. This poem relates the victorious entry of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel into Granada, last Moorish stronghold in Spain. Last year in Ateneo, 1876 to 77. After the summer vacation, Rizal returned to Manila in June 1876 for his last year in the Ateneo. His studies continued to fare well. As a matter of fact, he excelled in all subjects. The most brilliant Atenean of his time, he was truly the pride of the Jesuits. Rizal finished his last year at the Ateneo in blaze of glory. He obtained the highest grades in all subjects: philosophy, physics, biology, chemistry, languages, mineralogy, etc. Rizal graduated at the head of his class. On Commencement Day, March 23, 1877, Rizal, who was 16 years old, received from his alma mater, Ateneo Municipal, the degree of Bachelor of Arts with highest honors. It was a proud day for his family, but to Rizal, like all graduates, Commencement Day was a time of bitter sweetness, a joy mellowed with poignancy. The night before graduation, his last night at the college dormitory, he could not sleep. Early the following morning, the day of graduation, he prayed fervently at the college chapel and commended my life, as he said, to the Virgin, so that when I should step into the world which inspired me so much terror, she would protect me. Literary works. A year later, in 1877, he wrote more poems. It was his last year in the Ateneo. Among the poems written that year were El Heroismo de Caldo, the heroism of Columbus. This poem praises Columbus, the discoverer of America. Colon y Juan II, Columbus and John II. This poem relates how King John II of Portugal missed fame and riches by his failure to finance the projected expedition of Columbus to the New World. Gran consuelo en la mayor dedica, great solace in great misfortune. This is a legend in verse of the tragic life of Columbus. Un diálogo alusivo a la despedida de los colegiales, a farewell dialogue of the students. This was the last poem written by Rizal in Ateneo. It is a poignant poem. Rizal, unsurpassed in academic triumphs, was not a mere bookworm. He was active in extracurricular activities, an emperor inside the classroom. He was a campus leader outside. He was an active member, later secretary of a religious society, the Marian Congregation. He was accepted as member of this sodality not only because of his academic brilliance, but also because of his devotion to Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception, the college patroness. Rizal was also a member of the Academy of Spanish Literature and the Academy of Natural Sciences. These academies were exclusive societies in the Ateneo to which only Athenians who were gifted in literature and sciences could qualify for membership. In his leisure hours, Rizal cultivated his literary talent under the guidance of Father Sanchez. Another professor, Father Jose Villaclara, advised him to stop communing with the muses and pay more attention to more practical studies, such as philosophy and natural sciences. Rizal did not heed his advice. He continued to solicit Father Sanchez's help in improving his poetry. Aside from writing poetry, he devoted his spare time to arts. He studied painting under the famous Spanish painter Agustin Saez and sculpture under Romualdo de Jesus, noted Filipino sculptor. Both art masters honored him with their affection, for he was a talented pupil. Furthermore, Rizal, to develop his weak body, engaged in gymnastics and fencing. He thereby continued the physical training he began under the sports-minded Tio Manuel. Rizal impressed his Jesuit professors in the Ateneo with his artistic skill. One day, he carved an image of the Virgin Mary on a piece of baticulin, Philippine hardwood, with his pocket knife. The Jesuit fathers were amazed at the beauty and grace of the image. Father Leonard, impressed by Rizal's sculptural talent, requested him to carve for him an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Young Rizal complied, and within few days he presented it to Father Leonard. The old Jesuit was highly pleased and profusely thanked the teenage sculptor. He intended to take the image with him to Spain, but being an absent-minded professor, he forgot to do so. The Ateneo boarding students placed it on the door of their dormitory, and there it remained for many years, reminding all Athenians of Dr. Rizal, the greatest alumnus of their alma mater. This image played a significant part in Rizal's last hours at Fort Santiago. While Rizal was still a student at the Ateneo, his favorite teacher, Father Sanchez, requested him to write a drama based on the prose story of Saint Eustace the Martyr. During the summer vacation of 1876, he wrote the requested religious drama in poetic verses at his home in Calamba and finished it on June 2, 1876. Upon the opening of classes at the Ateneo in June 1876, his last academic year at the Jesuit College, he submitted to Father Sanchez the finished manuscript of the drama entitled San Eustacio, Martyr, Saint Eustace the Martyr. The good priest teacher read it and felicitated the young Athenian for work well done. Shortly after his graduation from the Ateneo, Rizal, who was then 16 years old, experienced his first romance, that painful experience which comes to nearly all adolescents. The girl was Segunda Katigbak, a pretty 15-year-old Batangueña from Lipa. In Rizal's own words, she was rather short, with eyes that were eloquent and ardent at times, and languid at others, rosy cheek, and an enchanting and provocative smile that revealed very beautiful teeth and the air of a sylph. Her entire self diffused a mysterious charm. One Sunday, Rizal visited his maternal grandmother, who lived in Trozo, Manila. He was accompanied by his friend Mariano Katigbak. His old grandmother was a friend of the Katigbak family of Lipa. When he reached his grandmother's house, he saw other guests, one of whom was an attractive girl who mysteriously caused his heart to palpitate with a strange ecstasy. She was the sister of his friend Mariano, and her name was Segunda. His grandmother's guests, who were mostly college students, knew of his skill in painting, so that they urged him to draw Segunda's portrait. He complied reluctantly and made a pencil sketch of her. From time to time, he reminisced later, she looked at me and I blushed. Rizal came to know Segunda more intimately during his weekly visits to La Concordia College, where his sister Olympia was a boarding student. Olympia was a close friend of Segunda. It was apparent that Rizal and Segunda loved each other. Theirs was indeed a love at first sight, but it was hopeless since the very beginning because Segunda was already engaged to be married to her townmate Manuel Luz. Rizal, for all his artistic and intellectual prowess, was a shy and timid lover. Segunda had manifested by insinuation and deeds her affection for him, but he timidly failed to propose. The last time they talked to each other was one Thursday in December 1877, when the Christmas vacation was about to begin. He visited Segunda at La Concordia College to say goodbye because he was going home to Calamba the following day. She, on her part, told him she was also going home one day later. She kept quiet after her brief reply, waiting for him to say something which her heart was clamoring to hear. But Rizal failed to come up to her expectation. He could only mumble, "Well, goodbye anyway. I'll see you when you pass Calamba on your way to Lipa." The next day Rizal arrived by steamer in his hometown. His mother did not recognize him at first, due to her failing eyesight. He was saddened to find out about his mother's growing blindness. His sisters gaily welcomed him, teasing him about Segunda, for they knew of his romance through Olympia. That night he demonstrated his skill in fencing to his family. He had a friendly fencing bout with the best fencer in Calamba and bested him. The following day, Saturday, he learned that the steamer carrying Segunda and her family would not anchor at Calamba because of the strong winds. It would stop in Binyan. He saddled his white horse and waited at the road. A cavalcade of caromatas from Binyan passed by, in one of whom was Segunda, smiling and waving her handkerchief at him. He duffled his hat and was tongue-tied to say anything. Her carriage rolled on and vanished in the distance like a swift shadow. He returned home, dazed and desolate with his first romance, ruined by his own shyness and reserve. The first girl whom he loved with ardent fervor was lost to him forever. She returned to Lipa and later married Manuel Luz. He remained in Calamba, a frustrated lover, cherishing nostalgic memories of a lost love. 3 years later, Rizal, recording his first and tragic romance, said, "Ended at an early hour, my first love. My virgin heart will always mourn the reckless step it took on the flower-decked abyss. My illusions will return, yes, but indifferent, uncertain, ready for the first betrayal on the path of love." References: